Hey folks, welcome to beautiful Saskatoon. Look at this lovely Christmas view, isn't it? It's wonderful. Thank you very much to Shirley for allowing me to read in front of her tree. Isn't it beautiful? Well, today is December 22nd, so that means chapter 22 of A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. So let's jump right into it. The ghost conducted him through several streets familiar to him. As they went along, Scrooge looked here and there to find himself, but nowhere was he to be seen. They entered poor Bob Cratchit's house, the dwelling he had visited before, and found the mother and the children seated around the fire. Quiet, very quiet. The noisy little Cratchits were as still as statues in one corner, and sat looking up at Peter, who had a book before him. The mother and her daughters were engaged in sewing, but surely they were very quiet. Soon Bob Cratchit was home. Then the two young Cratchits got up on his knees and laid each child a little cheek against his face, as if they said, "Don't be sad." Bob was very cheerful with them and spoke pleasantly to all the family. He broke down all at once. He couldn't help it. If he could have helped it, he and his child would have been farther apart, perhaps, than they were. He left the room and went upstairs into the room above, which was lighted cheerfully and hung with Christmas decorations. There was a chair set close beside Tiny Tim, and there were signs of someone having been there lately. Poor Bob sat down in it, and when he had thought a little and composed himself, he kissed the little face. He was reconciled to what had happened, and went down again quite happy. The family sat around the fire and talked. Bob told them of the extraordinary kindness of Mr. Scrooge's nephew, whom he had only met but once, and who, meeting him in the street that day, and seeing that he looked a little down, inquired what had happened to distress him. Bob told Fred that Tiny Tim had died, and Fred offered his deepest sympathies to the Cratchit family. He also offered his services in any way in which they were needed. He was quite kind. "It really seemed as if he had known our Tiny Tim," said Bob. "I'm sure he's a good soul," said Mrs. Cratchit. "I'm sure we shall none of us forget poor Tiny Tim, shall we, or this first parting that there was among us?" asked Bob of his family. "Never, father," they all cried. Mrs. Cratchit kissed her husband, his daughters kissed him, the two young Cratchits kissed him, and Peter shook his hand. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is chapter 22. Join us tomorrow for chapter 23 of A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. Thanks for watching. Merry Christmas.